Hey guys, James here with Water for Business Solutions, and I want to talk about doing the PPP Loan Forgiveness long form. There's two different forms now. You've got the short form or the easy form and the long form. I've done a previous video on the short form, and if you qualify for the short form, I definitely recommend using that, as you will see that this is a much more complicated process than the short form. So as we go ahead and we get into everything here, everything on this first page here, most everything here, is going to actually be very, very similar to the short form. Same business information, business name, DBA, address, EIN, phone number, contact, email, all of that, even up here, basically until we get down to the forgiveness amount calculation, is all going to be identical. Again, please make sure that you are using the information that you used to apply for the loan with when you are filling out this information up here. And if you don't have some of these numbers, like your loan number from the SBA, your loan number from your lender, your EIDL amount or application number, make sure that you go ahead and you contact your lender, as the lender should be able to provide you with these two numbers, and the SBA should be able to provide you with these two numbers. Where the long form, or this form, gets more complicated is you'll see that 1, 2, 3, 4, this is the exact same amount. The potential forgiveness amount is the same, and the forgiveness amount is the same. But we have these three lines right here which are added in. These three lines here require a lot of calculations. And those calculations are going to be done down here through Schedule A. And so we first need to figure out Schedule A. And so the best way to figure out Schedule A is to use this attached worksheet where we fill out everything. However, speaking from experience, because I've tried to use this worksheet, it's definitely not simple. Luckily for us, the AICPA has developed a forgiveness calculator where we can put in numbers. I'm going to include a link to that in the description and in the information on this video, but I would definitely recommend, if you have to use the long form, to go and use this calculator. So here's the calculator right here, and they've set this up to be a very easy, basically enter and it will return information for you. They give you information, notes, and everything like that to help you out. So step one is we're going to start by entering key data into the PPP Forgiveness Calculator tab. So that tab is right down here, and we're going to come here to the key data. So that's these key inputs here. So first thing it wants to know is the date of dispersal. If you're choosing an alternative date, then we'll go ahead and put in that alternative date there. Then we're going to choose the payroll covered, so that's going to be either your alternate date or your dispersal date if you choose an alternate date, and they even give you a little blip here on who qualifies for the alternate date, which is really nice. And then we're going to choose the length of covered period. So if you did not receive your loan before June 5th, you are automatically going to have a covered period of 24 weeks. If you did, you can either choose to have an 8-week covered period or a 24-week covered period. I'm going to choose for this sample company that we're doing 24 weeks. So what that does right here is it gives us our covered period right here from 5/1 to 10/15/20. We'll put in our PPP loan amount. From there, we've put in all of our key terms here, or all of our key inputs. So now we're going to come back and we're going to move to step 2. So we're going to move to the non-payroll cost tracker. So with this tracker here, if you are using the PPP loan to basically pay any type of business mortgage interest, any lease or rent payments, or any type of utility payments, this is where we're going to calculate it. And they make this really nice and really simple. And they basically give you the weeks, and they break it down by week for you based on the period that you chose. And as you see right here, we've got 24 weeks that it's giving me. Now, if I came back here and I changed this from a 24-week to an 8-week period, this would not change. The only thing that's going to change here is the date based on the date that you put right here. So I'm going to move that back to 24 because I want to go with that. And so we would come in here and we would put in any type of interest payment. So this is only for interest. So if we paid $100 for interest here, and we paid $1,000 on rent here, and for our electricity we paid $50 here, and $20 on gas, and $80 on water, and $150 on phone, and $80 on internet. And we would just basically do this over and over and over again until we basically completed everything. So I'm just going to throw in a few different areas here just to give y'all an example. And obviously make sure you are filling this out correctly, because you're going to need to provide documentation and backup proof to confirm all of this. That backup proof for your mortgage and interest payments is going to be an amortization schedule, preferably from your mortgage holder or from the lender. For your rent payments, it's going to be a copy of your rent or your lease, along with receipt of payments from your landlord that are dated. And then for your utility payments, it's going to be the invoices and any payment receipts that you have with those invoices. So make sure that you are actually putting in the real numbers here, because you are going to have to substantiate whatever you put in here So now we've put in everything here. And so it tells us what our total for mortgage write-off is, our total for interest, our total for interest, our total for rent and lease, and our total for utilities. So now we're going to move to step 2, and that's going to be the FTE input tab. FTE is your full-time equivalent. So first thing you need to do is to calculate your full-time equivalent. A full-time equivalent is going to be the number of full-time equivalent people you have. So if you have someone working for you part-time, they're only going to count as half a person. Now, if you have 2 people working for you part-time, then they will count as a whole person. The way to calculate your FTE is to take the hours that that person works divided by 40, and that will give you each person's FTE. And then you'll want to add that together. So the first question that we have here is average FTE employees during the covered period. So you'd need to figure out your average FTE employees from your covered period. Again, we can come here, take a look at your covered period right here. So May 1st to October 15th. So you would hop in there and using your payroll reports and your payroll information, determine your average FTE. So let's say you had 10 people working for you, but 2 of those were part-time. We would put in a 9 there. Then we come down here and we've got 3 options that we can use here to determine which FTE write-off we can use. The first one is if you were active in 2019, you can choose between the period of February 15th, 2019 and June 30th, 2019, how many FTE employees you have. You want this number here, whatever you put on one of these columns, if possible, to be lower than this number here, because that will give you the greatest write-off. If you weren't operating in 2019, you can then use this period between January 1st, 2020 and February 29th, 2020, so the first 2 months, and put that in. If that still does not work, then we can come here and we can take a look between January 1st, 2020 and February 29th, 2020, or a consecutive 12-week period between May 1st, 2019 and September 15th, 2019. So you can use that too. So there's several different options. Ultimately, you want to use the option that is going to give you the lowest number here. So the point in time that they let you select from that you had the lowest number of full-time equivalent employees is what you want to use. If this number is higher than this number, you may have part of the loan not forgiven because you didn't have the same amount of workforce. Okay. If this is not lower than this number up here, so 7, if this 7 was a 10 instead of a 7, we can come down here to a safe harbor, and we can determine if you have a safe harbor option. So the safe harbor option, and you don't need to do this if this number in column R is less than what's in N, but if it isn't, we come down here and we'll figure out what your FTE is between February 15th and April 26th and enter that. Then we would go ahead and put in between for the pay period inclusive of February 15th. So that's just one pay period. Whereas this could be 6, if you're paying on a bi-weekly, probably 6 pay periods. If you're paying on a weekly, about 12 pay periods. If you're paying on a bi-monthly, you'll probably have 5 pay periods in here. If this number is higher than this number, so if step 2 is higher than step 1, then you can go ahead and move to step 4. If not, then you do not have a safe harbor. From there, if you qualify for safe harbor, then we need to check one other thing. We want to see what your FTE is now compared to everything. This FTE basically needs to equal here. If it doesn't, so let's say we have a 2.0 here, it's going to tell you exactly what to do here. Complete line 13 of PPP by dividing line 12 and line 11 of that schedule. But if we're above that, it's going to say enter 1. The other thing to keep in mind here is the SBA wants to know who was paid, who would have gotten a salary more than $100,000, because your salary is capped at a total of $100,000 for PPP loan stuff. So if you make more than $100,000, you have to be put into your own group. So you would have them in their own column here. Once we finish this FTE work page and we've gone ahead and put in everything that we can and we finished our calculations here, we'll come back and we'll move to the Payroll Accumulator tab. So this tab, we're going to put in every single employee that you have. We're then going to put in what their social security numbers are, so identifiers for them. Only put in the last 4 numbers here. Whether they're hourly or salary, so H for hourly, S for salary, what their hourly rate is, or their salary is, and this is going to be what it was for the first quarter of 2020. So what it was between January 1st and March 31st of 2020. If they got a raise, average that out. If they were demoted or they lost money, average that out, and because this is going to be an average. Then this column we're going to put in our gross wages. So you should be able to get a payroll report from your payroll service provider that will allow you to enter all of these numbers here. This is going to be your gross wages, i.e. your salary or hourly rates, overtime, taxes, etc., along with any applicable things that are covered for retirement contributions, health care, anything like that. It's going to be their gross wages here. You cannot include Medicare and Social Security paid in by the employer. That is not included. From there, we're going to say what your average annual salary or hourly wage is for the covered period. So between May 1st and October 15th for this client, what were each of their employees' hourly wages? So I've given several examples. This first employee kept the same hourly rate. This next one here lost $8,000 a year. The next one ended up gaining $4,000 a year. The next one has a salary that stayed consistent, and the next one's salary was cut in half. And then finally, this hourly wage was cut in half here. It's going to show you what the differences are or the increases, what the covered salary is compared to the previous quarter, so 100%, 47%, etc., and percentage of covered period wages. If you have more than a 25% decrease in wages, then we are going to need to do some other things. That is going to be this area here. If you don't have more than a 25%, so this column here, if it's 75% or higher, but basically they didn't have a huge drop in wages, more than 25%, then you don't have to do this if anyone in your company didn't have that. If they did, you'll come in here and we'll start filling out this. What was their salary as of February 15th? What was their salary average between February 15th and April 26th? So you'll see with these two, I've done a drop there. Since 2B is not greater than 2A, we end up with a no. And if you want more information, we can come down here to note 8 and it will give you more information on what that no means. Since this is a no, we would then come over here and we would see what their annual salary or wage was as of the date of this application, or December 31st. So both of these employees had gone ahead and increased back up in salary, with this employee still being below that 25%. So since that employee was below 25%, 1 second here, I need to go ahead and put in, I didn't put in this hourly here, so we're going to say that they worked 40 hours. There we go. That's why it wasn't calculating. So since this employee was reduced by more than 25% and none of the safe harbors applied to them, then it reduces the amount that you can claim by $5,769. Same thing with this employee. Since their hourly wage went down and they work an average of 40 hours, it reduces it by $314 because that's the reduction in their hourly wage. Now, as I said previously, if you have employees that make more than $100,000, they will not be included up here. They need to be done on their own sheet down here. I didn't do any examples of that. Also, if you have a owner employee, owner employees cannot be included up here. Owner employees need to be calculated on their own, as they are limited to their own stipulations here. So we would put in what their gross wages are, etc., to determine how much can be claimed for this owner employee. This prorated 2019 compensation is going to be what they would have gotten in 2019. So if they got a raise this year over where they were last year, not all of their salary will be covered. The owner-operators can have a total of $20,833, which is the maximum that any employee can get. So if this prorated compensation was $21,000, need an extra zero in there. It won't let me do that one there because that's not an applicable field because it's so high. But if last year, instead of getting paid $20,833 because you were getting $100,000 a year, you only would have gotten paid $15,000, that is all that's able to be forgiven there. So keep that in mind. Down here, we do have a bunch of different notes and stuff if you want to read more into everything. Then we're going to come back here and we're going to review the Schedule A worksheet and Schedule A tab for any other input. So we'll start with Schedule A. And we've got an FTE exception here. So a lot of this stuff is going to autofill. Anything in gray or green is autofilling. Blue is the only thing you need to put in. So an FTE exception is going to basically be you attempted to hire back an employee and they would not come back to work. Or an employee came to you and quit and you were unable to replace them. Or an employee came to you and requested a reduction in the hours that they worked. So it'll give you the three options here that you can use there. And we would want to put in who the employee is, what the reason for exemption is, when the employment offer was made, if you were offering to hire them back, and then provide some notes on what was going on there. It will add everything up here and it will figure out what your reduction in exceptions is so that it will calculate it onto your forgiveness calculator. Schedule A here will have you do a few other things. A lot of this is going to autofill here. So inner line 1, that's going to carry over. All of these are going to basically carry over here from previous entries. But we are going to want to put in here if you had any type of employee health insurance contributions, put in that amount there. I'm saying that this one doesn't have it. Same thing with retirement plans or local taxes assessed on employee compensation. Put in those amounts and make sure you provide payment receipts for those. Then we have two other boxes here about employee reduction in average pay, or the reduction in safe harbor. So read these, see if it's applicable or not. If it's not applicable, leave it blank. If it is applicable, go ahead and put an X in there. Once we've reviewed all of that, we should now have an almost complete PPP forgiveness loan calculator. Because we filled in all of this stuff, most of this information is going to come from elsewhere. So it's going to go ahead and say, okay, our payroll costs was $78,000, our business mortgage interest was $600, $5,000 for the lease, $1,520 for the utilities. So we have total eligible costs for $83,991. Now, as we come down here, we have a reduction of $6,000 from our wage reductions. If you remember back on this payroll accumulator sheet, we reduced everything by $6,000 because of these two employees. So it's going to show that reduction right here. And it's going to total it again. Then it's going to go ahead and do an FTE reduction quotient. So if your full-time equivalence was not where it should be, if you were below that, then it will reduce everything again. And let's say you had 90%, it will multiply this by 90%. And so you'll only get 90% of this $77,000. So then it will go ahead and bring in this total potential forgiveness amount. From there, we'll put in, we've already got our PPP loan amount, which we put in up here. Payroll costs at the 60% requirement. So it will go ahead and figure all of that out. And then it will figure out your total amount that can be forgiven. So for this example here, all $50,000 which was taken out can be forgiven, even though we had a reduction in pay, and we had, actually we didn't have, but we could also show that we had a reduction in full-time equivalent. So let's say that this was 6, just to give y'all an example here. 1 second. There we go. Sorry, I had a this box checked up here, which didn't let this box change down here. So now when we take a look at this and we come to the forgiveness calculator, we'll see that this reduction calculator is at 77%, so it will multiply that. Now if we're still above that $50,000, we don't have an issue there, but it could take us below. So let's say we pulled out all of, we're just going to do some reductions here just to show an example of it. Let's do 15,000. So now once we do that, it's going to pull everything down, and even with those reductions, we're still above just barely that $50,000. So you'll see that we're now at $50,285. So I'm going to make one more reduction here just so that y'all will see. And now instead of getting $50,000 forgiven, we're only going to get $49,818 forgiven. So you'll have a remainder of $182 left to pay off. Now, if you got any EIDL, you'll have to put that in here because the EIDL is no longer able to be forgiven. So if you got that EIDL, put that $10,000 there. The SBA will know whether you have it because they were the ones that gave it to you. So make sure you're being accurate with this, and that will give you what your balance is after loan forgiveness. From there, we're going to take all of this information, and rather than using this worksheet here, we're just going to fill all of this out because we've got a Schedule A on this list here, so we can just pull up the Schedule A, and we'll start with line 1, and we'll take the number from line 1 and put it onto here. Same thing for line 2, line 3, so on and so forth, and just fill all of this out. We would then come up here, and this is going to be this PPP forgiveness calculator. Line 1, 2, 3, they're all numbered for you, so it's nice and easy, so that you can put all of that information in right where it's supposed to go. And then you're going to be able to submit this and get the maximum forgiveness that you can. Now, just like the other form, you've got to go ahead and check off all of this information here saying, I agree to everything, initial it, sign it, etc. And you'll also need to come down here and put in your demographic information. If you are using this form, go ahead and make sure that you submit all of these form calculations when you submit your loan forgiveness application, as it will go ahead and make it easier because the SBA and the lender can see everything. That's why they have this here, but this form significantly simplifies what you're having to do here. As you can see, it's definitely more of a enter the number and go from there type thing, rather than figuring it out. So I do strongly recommend using this form if you have to do the long form for the PPP forgiveness. If that doesn't apply to you, then definitely go ahead and use the easy form because this is, as you can see, a complicated process, and I pre-filled a lot of stuff here, and it still took us a while to get through everything. Guys, if you've got any questions or need help with anything, don't hesitate to give us a call at Waterford Business Solutions with 229-584-8793, or shoot us an email at info@waterfordbusiness.com, and we'll be happy to help you out. Have a wonderful rest of your day.